We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. Well, it is again absolutely crazy how quickly time flies. But the 2025 recruiting class is essentially in the books, with possible exceptions here and there. It is I cannot believe that how quickly the football season goes. So we're going to be diving in to who Iowa landed. Is this a good class? Do I consider this a successful class? Looking at Iowa's major official visit weekend, how they did with that, decommitments, and things like that. And who is possibly still on the board, and just various other aspects to the recruiting class. I think also I am going to review the comments of Tyler Barnes, who is the general manager, which is crazy to say that college football programs have a general manager. I thought he was the director of recruiting, but in the transcripts, that's what he was called, the general manager. But I do think he has good comments specifically on the change. And originally, in a previous video that I recorded about Cade McNamara, where the quarterback situation is, and what else did I talk about in that video? Yeah, I mainly talked about the quarterback position going into next year and things of that nature. And I detailed in the beginning, unfortunately, my recording got messed up, so I wasn't able to add it. But college football is going to 105 players overall on the roster. You can have all 105 on scholarship. You can have, I don't think there's a limit. I mean, I guess the limit would or the minimum would be like whatever amount that you need to fill a football team. But I don't know, like in theory, if you could only have 20 scholarship players. I don't know on that part. But before, in recent years past, what it was is you could only have the max was 85 scholarship players, but you could have 130, 120, 110, 140 players that made up the roster, including of preferred walk-ons, which Iowa took full advantage of. Iowa recruited the walk-on position heavily because they knew that that was their pathway towards building up as strong of a roster of a team as possible. Now, every program definitely pays some attention to their walk-on aspect of the roster, but I think Iowa probably did it more so than most. So it will be interesting to see how this change to 105 players affects Iowa in this way. We've already seen a change last year, and I'll show you guys when I pull up some of the recruiting sites. Last year and the year before, Iowa had at least five preferred walk-ons. I mean, I think the average would be between 5 and 10 preferred walk-on guys, usually from the state of Iowa. Um, and it was very much a part of the recruiting class. It still is. But now they only took two preferred walk on guys. They took an athlete out of the state of Iowa. I forget his name. We'll find it when I pull it up here momentarily. And they took a quarterback in Ryan Fitzgerald, who is the son of former Northwestern coach Pat Fitzgerald. So it's already changed. They're only taking two. I think there is one possible addition that they might add, and I want to get this out of the way so I can talk about the actual class here moving forward. A kicker visited Iowa this past weekend. It's like Dave Freitas. He's the number 5 kicker according to Cole's Kicking Academy. He's a 5-star kicker according to Cole's Kicking Academy. One thing you guys need to know about kicking rankings is there's all different types of services that do it. There are big camps and programs that also rank the kickers that come through their programs. The big one would be Coles. There's also another one that's a pretty big one. And I looked at the recruiting site or these sites because I was very interested in it myself. And these are kicking camps, kicking programs across the nation. And both sites had multiple players that were committed to FBS level schools, Power Four level schools. Um, but they didn't have the same players rated though. So it leads me to believe that primarily kickers in high school choose like one major recruiting service to go and get training, or excuse me, kicking developmental program that also happens to be a ranking system. They go there, they stick with them, and then they get rated and they have their stuff pushed out to the programs. I would say probably Coles is the biggest kicking academy. And then of course you have the traditional recruiting services, 247 Sports, Rivals, On Three that ranks the kickers themselves and punters. Um, but they don't, put on these purely specialist camps like Coles and this other one. Like, for example, Trip Woody, who was the kicker brought in the last class, he was not rated by Cole's Kicking Academy, but he was rated by this other kicking group. And that's how I came across it. So we'll see his name is Dominic DeFreitas. We'll see what happens with that. I find it odd at this point that Iowa brought him on campus and don't we don't hear anything further on it. I think there's a good chance that Iowa does land him. There is another signing day in February, so he can commit anywhere from now until February if he so chooses. Or he might, and he actually still has a day or two. I think the December signing period goes from the 4th to the 6th. Um, so he has a day or two still to decide. I personally am all for it. He hit a 62-yard field goal, breaking the state of Indiana record. He's got a big leg. He's very raw. He's probably not as polished of a specialist as Scott Starzik, which I'll get to here momentarily. But I think Iowa landing him would be good. The thing that you guys have to remember, though, is again, Iowa only has 105 spots. So that makes other positions even more important. Even with 130 roster spots that Iowa would traditionally do. By the way, guys, this is going to be a long uh, episode. Okay, there's a lot to get into. Just forewarned. Um, Even if that was the case, Iowa still at most would have 2 kickers on the roster. At most, maybe, well, at most, maybe 3 and 2 punters, like just in case one of them gets injured, because the risk of injury and them not being able to play is far less. I mean, think about the last 10 years that Iowa has had. Have any of the kickers or punters been injured? Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, Marshall Kane was able to finish. Keith Duncan was able to finish. Torrey Taylor played every game. Reese Dakin has played every game this past season. Drew Stevens hasn't missed any games due to injury over the past 3 years. So it puts a premium on these other positions. And so Iowa, the question that they have to ask themselves when it comes to the position of kicker is, do we already have somebody that could potentially be a backup, which they do in Trip Woody, or is this kid a kid that they can see possibly being their starting kicker down the line? And he is good enough to where it is worth giving him a roster spot because he is likely going to be your starting kicker. So we'll see what happens with that. He definitely has skill. Um, I searched all day for information on it and I couldn't find anything. So, anyways, moving this on, this class came together per usual. Iowa got a bulk of their commitments. Let me go ahead and get this pulled up here. Before we get to anything, I also want to say the recruiting site that I will be using as my main point of reference will be On3. I've said this multiple times now. I believe that On3 is the best, most accurately rated site. And as far as the team rankings go, it is definitely the best as it is a weighted system rather than the other recruiting sites, which often they have like a cap of like 20 commits, but if you have less than 20 commits, you get penalized by not accruing points, rather than there being an average score of the players that are rated, the average rating of the players that you have committed, rather than it being like, you having 28 commits and you add a bunch of points by that. But I'll be using 247 Sports as a reference, but not the reference. All right. So here are the ratings. Pure 247 Sports. Iowa has multiple 4 stars. Yossi Epinesa is a 5 star according to 247 Sports. They are the highest on him. Uh, 14th nationally. That means Iowa has landed 3 5 star players in the last 10 years, I would say. AJ Epinesa, Xavier Wanpa, and of course, now Yossi Epinesa. It would have been 4 if Caden Proctor didn't think so lowly of a school that he actually quite liked. But I digress. Thomas Meyer is a really good addition, tight end. There was some trepidation of whether he was going to play defensive end or get on the defensive line or stay at tight end. In a lot of regards, his body, the thickness, the size, standing at 6'5", reminds me of Logan Lee, who was actually a high 3 star, 4 star tight end coming out of high school, out of Illinois. And obviously, he had a solid career at Iowa. Um, and even almost stuck in the NFL. I don't think he is in the NFL right now, but so but I think obviously he's a bit more athletic and he is higher rated. He has a grade of a 93. They consider him a top 150 prospect, the ninth best tight end in the country. This will be the second year in a row. Abdul Hodge is killing it in recruiting this position. Obviously, in the state of Iowa, there's recruiters that are area specific, like LeVar Woods. Let's see who his primary recruiters were. Jay Neiman, primary state of Iowa recruiters, but he's done great. He really has. I mean, going back to last year's class, the 2 tight ends that they landed where one was a consensus 4 star in Gavin Hoffman, who has really, really high upside with a 40-inch vertical leap. I cannot wait to see what leaps he has made just from year 1 to year 2 next year. And he was an early enrollee at Iowa. And then, of course, Michael Burt, who Iowa was able to land and steal from Nebraska over Nebraska when a lot of people had him favored to go to Nebraska out of the Omaha area. And he ended up being a high 3 star tight end, 89, one of the top 30 tight ends in the country. The reason why he wasn't rated higher was because of the school he went to that primarily ran the football, so he didn't have a ton of tape on his receiving ability and being able to stretch defenses out and move well as a tight end in that fashion. But he still was highly rated. Um, and I can't wait to see, and great size at 6'5" as well. So this is the second year in a row that the tight end class has been the one of the top two or three position groups recruited for the Hawkeyes. And I don't see that slowing down anytime soon, especially when you look at the success that Iowa tight ends are currently having in the NFL. Burt Goucher, 92, really nice get. Iowa got early on in the process. He totally climbed the recruiting rankings. He's more of an inside linebacker. Joey Van Vetzinga, 89. Eli Johnson, the other tight end in the class, 6'5", 235 pounds, 89, top 30 tight end. Kind of similar to last year's class. He is the second tight end, but it's still a really nice get. You know, he's not the tight end, but he's still a really nice tight end. Um, and in uh, what's his name, Taylor Barnes comments, he said that he was stunned that Minnesota and Wisconsin were not in on him since he was, only 50 miles away from him. But he still has this. Minnesota did end up offering him. Who knows how hard they made the push though? Missouri, Purdue, Vandy. Well, what really did it for Iowa in the end, although he was favored to go to Iowa State for a while, was that they were one of the first teams to offer him from the Power Four level. So I really like him. I think he is more of a receiving threat at this point in his career. But yeah. Then there's Terrence Smith, who's an 89. This will be one of the highest rated wide receivers that Iowa has landed in a long time. Of course, there's Keegan Johnson, there's Arlen Bruce, who were both technically um, four stars in their own regards from various recruiting sites. But this just goes to show, guys. I've told you this time and time again. The nomenclature, the misconception, the perennial thought of Iowa not recruiting the wide receiver position well out of high school is absurd. It just categorically is false. It is unbelievably false. Okay. Iowa stunningly recruits way better at the position than they should based off of the on-field performances. I mean, this is a kid that's 6'3", 6'4", had Division I basketball interest. The primary team that Iowa was in competition with was Minnesota, and Tyler Barnes said that he would have, if he lived in the Chicago area, this kid would have had 20 plus more offers than what he had. And I believe it. I do. So Iowa was luckily able to land him early in the process. There's Mason Woods, who Taylor Barnes said that they will likely bring him in as a tight end to start out with, kind of in the Noah Fant style of things, which I think kind of goes with what Brian Ferentz did early in his career but got away from, and what Tim Lester's trying to do, which is to add some speed to his offense. Personally, I think that he's a wide receiver. I think he's too small to be a tight end. But then again, there's been people like George Kittle. Being a tight end is very much a mindset. So I just don't want Iowa to waste and this, of course, is LeVar Wood's son. I just don't want Iowa to waste him on a position group that's loaded. I don't. And personally, I think it would be easier for Iowa to transition him from wide receiver to tight end if it doesn't work out at wide receiver than vice versa, from tight end to wide receiver, um, because of the weight situation. Carson Cooney, By all the other recruiting services, they are a bit higher on him than 247 Sports, but 247 Sports is still pretty high on him. We'll see. I'm sure some of these kids will still have some added rankings come down the pipeline. So we'll see. I doubt that it's completely done yet. Brad Fitzgibbon, 88, defensive lineman. I like him. I think he's got good size. Um, which he's really the only defensive line, or no, him and Yossi Epinesa actually, which just goes with Kelvin Bell continuing to recruit the defensive line position well. Last year, it was the best recruited position for the Hawkeyes. Alante Dean was the most recent recruit. There was some late toggling back and forth, some discrepancies, some concerns. Uh, Ultimately, they were soothed, and Iowa landed him. The primary competition for him was Louisville. I kept thinking to myself, like, for the longest time, what is taking this kid so long to recruit or to commit? He took an official visit that late in the process. They do commit fairly quickly. Um, he's going to come to Iowa as a safe at this point. He's already 200 pounds, and good Iowa safeties um, are like multi-athlete type kids that come in and have all this versatility. Now, whether he's a cash versus safety, time will tell. I think he's probably in the mold of a Cohen Entringer. A lot of the guys, if you can start at safety, you can probably start at cash. Sebastian Castro, if Iowa needed, and they have needed this in the past, could start at safety if need be. That's just the way it is. He had some good offers. I don't think that these were always committable offers, but they were good offers all the same. Washington was a recent offer for him. Pitt, Ole Miss, LSU, Louisville. LSU probably wasn't, and Ole Miss that probably didn't remain committable offers. Maybe Ole Miss, but probably not LSU. Boston College, Iowa State. So this is a good get for Iowa. This kid probably has like one of the much like Josiah Patterson, one of the better offer sheets of the class. Um, that's not the end all be all. And recruits that are from solid high schools in the state of Florida do tend to get more exposure. But still, this is a good late get for the Hawkeyes. Lucas Algier, who is the son of a former Hawkeye, he's going to come in as an offensive tackle more than likely. This was a great get. There was major competition for him. Some strong regional offers, and for a while it was Missouri and Kansas State that were the leaders for him, but ultimately Iowa won out for him. Thank goodness. Nathan McNeil was a late get at the running back position. Iowa was struggling to find somebody that they felt good about. This is a late bloomer. I really like him. I think that this is a great get, but I think he's got good size, good burst. I want to read you guys his profile here. Late blooming running back competition down in the Sunshine State. Not a ton of third party verified information available, but is believed to be hovering around 5'11, 195 pounds midway through 12th grade campaign. It should only add more bulk in the coming years. A naturally powerful runner with promising vision that can make defenders miss in tight quarters and extend plays with his balance and strength. More of a short stepper with encouraging wiggle that lacks true breakaway speed, but has the foot quickness to beat defenders out to the perimeter. Has been featured heavily as a pass catcher and ran routes from a slot posting, which suggests that he could eventually offer some three down versatility. Overall, he should be viewed as a developmental ball carrier that's starting to play his best football as he embarks on his collegiate career. I mean, the thing is I don't view him as any less of a prospect as Kamari Moulton. And, the running back position is a position that with a good coach and a good weight training program, you can get him in and they can pretty much immediately make an impact, no matter what the rating is. So, I think he is better than his ranking indicates. I just think that there's not a lot of information on him. Um, the good news is Iowa won't need him immediately, which is fine. It'll give him some time to develop. But I think he's got good size. He's very similar to Caleb Johnson. Maybe not as physically developed, but I would say he's somewhere in between that um, and maybe a Tyler Goodson a little bit. So I think this is a good get. The quarterback, Jimmy Sullivan, who's definitely capable of making plays with his legs, got a really smooth throwing motion. Um, I'm not sure why he's not rated higher, but um, he had some have Michigan State, Minnesota, some regional Big Two. We'll see. He seems to be a smart kid, a capable kid. Time will tell. We'll see what Tim Lester can do at the quarterback position. I think it'll, of course, be at least a year before there's any opportunity for him to see the field. And then, of course, Charles Bell, who's going to come in at corner. I think this was a good get for Iowa as well. Andrew McPherson. The main reason, actually, I wanted to show you guys 247 Sports is to show the decommitments. So Iowa did, of course, have out of. Actually, I wanted to show you guys Cameron Herron decommit after Notre Dame offered him. It was a tough loss because Iowa recruited him for a long time. And they did a lot of work into uncovering him, and they just didn't. Um, but the thing is, it's understandable. He goes to a Catholic school. Notre Dame is the in-state Catholic university, and he went Notre Dame. So, at least it's not a Big Ten school or something like that. But still, it does stink that Iowa lost out. Decommits that Iowa had in him, kicker Scott Starzik, and Nick Brooks. I think he probably stings the most because he was the most obtainable. And he was one that really emerged as a late bloomer, as like a high 3-star. And then he became a 4-star prospect. And he would have really rounded out this class nicely, and I think he really would have fit well in Iowa's system. So here is the official visit weekend. I always tell you guys, Iowa, they definitely have to land as many of these kids as they can. I totally forgot about this guy. He was committed to Maryland and then, or UCF actually, and decommitted. Then he committed to Colorado. Um, you have to land a majority of these players. And, the thing is that the recruiting process, especially nowadays, is a really long process. I think Iowa's official visit weekend was still a success, or the main June official visit weekend. That's when the major, late May, June, maybe early July, or when the major recruiting weekends take place for the universities. Um, I think they had a successful official visit weekend, but it definitely was not as good as last year, where they only missed on one guy, Xavier Lucas, who is at Wisconsin and doing quite well at Wisconsin. Um, you know, they landed Cameron Herron, who flipped. That's kind of like, it's not like a full point against Iowa, it's like a 50% point. Christian Hudson committed to UCF. How Iowa didn't beat out UCF, I don't know, but sometimes it's hard to land kids out of the state of Florida. Um, Joshua Guerrero uh, went to Pitt. Um, Brock Heath, Kansas State. And then, of course, Scott Starzik, Iowa landed him, and then he flipped. So it's tough. I mean, realistically, the only guys that Iowa completely missed on would be, you know, Hudson, Guerrero, Brock Heath, and that's it. So they completely swung and missed on three guys. What are you going to do? I think as long as you can hit at like a 80%, 75 to 80% clip, you're in decent shape. All right, let's look at on three here. And then of course there was Nick Brooks, like I said, Scott Starzik, that decommitted. Um, these are the three decommits that Iowa had. All two of them 4-star. So what are you going to do? All right, here is on this. This is the rating for Iowa's class. I think overall this is a strong class. It's small because Iowa is overstacked with their roster, but a few spots behind last year, which is 29th. I've told you guys time and time again that Iowa should every year be at least top 40, preferably top 35 in recruiting. Um, I think that this is a good wholesome class with guys that are highly rated. They were good, solid recruiting wins, guys that can definitely contribute that I don't really see as like projects or diamonds in the rough that Iowa nobody else was aware of, and they're a 2-star prospect. That's not the case. Okay, all these guys had, with the exception of one or two guys, because they were recruited late in the process, were guys that were recruited by multiple Power Four level schools. Okay, the score that they have of an 87, the average class rating of an 87.87 is only a little bit less than what it was last year of 87.97, which last year was a really good class. But you look at this, and Iowa has five 4-star guys composite according to 247 Sports. Yossi Epinesa, 4-star. Burt Goucher, 4-star. Thomas Meyer, 4-star. Carson Cooney, 4-star. And wide receiver Terrence Smith, 4-star, who is a 4-star as well, purely rated by On 3. And everywhere else, high 3-star. So, and then again, you look at the rest of the guys. At various times, I think Lucas Algier was a 4-star by On 3, and they did end up changing that. There were some guys that took slight dips in their rating, but these are all solidly ranked guys. I mean, 87, 88, 89. So it's just not a big class as far as numbers go. Iowa usually does take minimum 20 players. So if you look at the class, comparatively, it is much smaller. And by the way, just looking at the walk-ons, I want to show you guys the difference in this year compared to last year. The recruits that it's not showing it here. It'll show it here though for walk-on players. So the two walk-on players that Iowa has obviously is Ryan Fitzgerald right here with a grade of an 86, and Race Heitman, who's like an all-around player. Let's go to 2024. Iowa had like 10 guys. Ivanamu actually fresh. So here's one, Ethan Agastan. There's two, DJ Vanagme. There's three, Graham Eben, um, who went to the same school as Reese Vanderzee. Trip Woody as a kicker. Devin Van Ness, who's the brother of Lucas Van Ness. Trent Kakris. I mean, how many is that already? Let's hold on. I got to keep count. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, and I'm sure there's even one or two that I'm not counting. So it just goes to show you college football really, and college sports really, but mainly college football really is changing and evolving. Um, and it's not done yet. So that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, lastly, there's really only one or two guys still on the board for Iowa, unless there's like some random kid that they uncover. Um, and they absolutely have to offer him, which I don't think will be the case this year. Um, this is the class. The only other two guys that Iowa is known to be in on is JUCO corner Kayshawn Davala, who is not favored at this point. to go to Iowa, not even in the top four. But if they did land him, it would be a really good get. I mean, they're still definitely in high contention. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of competition for him, though. That's the thing. So I think that I would give Iowa exactly what they have, like a 10% chance to land him. Um, and the other guy would be the kicker that I talked about, Dominic DeFreitas, right here. So that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, like I said, there was no late bloomers. There was no guys that we didn't hear about all year that Iowa all of a sudden uncovered or anything like that. So I think this is a good class, just as good as last year as far as high end talent. I think Iowa brought in players at positions of need and even positions that are pretty strong. Um, Really, the only position that I would say maybe Iowa did not, they landed two linebackers, they landed two quarterbacks, they landed one running back, they landed three tight ends, they landed one wide receiver, they landed two offensive linemen and two defensive linemen. That's probably the area that Iowa was lower in that they than they usually are. Usually they land at least three to four offensive linemen and three to four defensive linemen, if not more. Last year they took, I think, four or five D linemen. Same at the offensive line. Usually they take two interior guys, with one of them projecting at the center position and two guys that they see more on the outside. So, but again, with the numbers, they they maybe could not make it happen, So I am pleased with this class. I think this is a talented class with some high upside prospects. And if I had to say who I think could be a day one contributor, of course, it's Yossi Epinesa. Physically, he is very gifted. The linebackers that Iowa has are very talented as well. They are. I don't think that they will compete for playing time like on the defensive side of the ball quite yet, as Iowa has plenty of linebacker talent already in the room, but they might be able to compete for special teams time. I think Terrence Smith could vie for some time due to Iowa's wide receiver room. But again, if Iowa does what they need to do in the transfer portal, then he won't see the field because of how many contributors Iowa already has at the wide receiver position that will be returning next year. Dayton Howard, Jarriett Bowie, Jacob Gill, Seth Anderson, Reese Vanderzee. So they should be okay. Um, let's go to commits so I can get it all. Maybe Thomas Meyer sees the field on special teams, but it's very hard for true freshmen to see the field, like specifically on offense or specifically on defense. It wouldn't surprise me if Nathan McNeil did. I mean, running back is a position where guys can come on campus just like Kamari Moulton did and see playing time. So, but usually you have between 2 and 5 guys that see any sort of playing time on the field. Maybe Olante Dean, if he's much more developed. I mean, you look at last year's class and a guy that was originally a wide receiver that Iowa was able to land as a DB, Jalen Watson, is already in the two deeps. You know, so you just never know. You never know. It's really hard to say. To me, the you to be able to play early you have to mentally be ready and physically you need to be in a good spot to actually compete. Those are the two qualifiers. And a lot of freshmen physically are ready, but mentally they're not ready. They're not ready for the work ethic. They're not ready for the schedule, the aggression, the change in competition, all that stuff. Some guys are ready mentally, but physically they need more time. So all right, guys, that's going to do it for me. If there's any other updates, I will let you guys know. You guys know I got you guys covered. I've been pumping out a lot of content the last couple of weeks. You know your boys got you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about the 2025 recruiting class. Of course, the transfer portal will be here, and I'll have you guys covered with that as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's get this channel to 1,000 scrubs. 1,000 subs, not scrub. I mean, I guess scrubs too. No, no, no. But subs, the whole 9 yards. And last but not least, DBAP. Don't be a pussy willow. In fact, some of your feelings because your feelings just matter. I love you, Hawk fans. See you guys next time. Bye bye.